Hey, welcome to another episode of our Secure Dental podcast, where we bring in many different talents from both inside and outside our dental industry. And today we have a really special treat here, Diwakar Sinha. He is the CEO of Polaris. Polaris is a full-time consulting firm that helps dental practices scale, expand, make them out there into the market with capital, with scaling, with processes. Anything to do with numbers and financial, this is a guy we want to contact. So, Diwakar, let's go, man. Love to have you. Thanks for coming on, and the floor is yours. What's your background?
No, thank you for having me. Yeah, so my background is 17 years in credit and transaction advisory after that, but 17 years in the lower middle market and middle market space, providing capital in the form of debt to dental companies, medical urgent care companies, pharmacy companies, all healthcare. And then I
Mm,
transitioned to the transaction advisory space and have transacted over a couple $100 million in the dental space. We've done plastic surgery. We've done work with ENT companies. So all different aspects of that, and also help businesses scale in the space. So our process at Polaris Healthcare Partners is to not only help businesses scale, but eventually help them transact in the space to whatever their goals are, to a strategic partner or to eventually a private equity sponsor if they get to eventual
mm.
scale.
So you guys basically consult, advise, and direct them, and also provide guidance that throughout the process, right? Now,
And
does a
eventually
dental
transact, yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Now, do they really have to transact, or do they have to have something like a goal in mind, or do you just kind of help consult as well?
Yeah, we more than half of the clients that come to us, they don't have a vision when they, engage us in the beginning, and we help them guide on what their vision, may be. We always wanna work with the end in mind, right? So if they don't have a goal, we want them to think about, are they building a legacy business? Are they thinking
Mm,
about going from 1 to 2 locations or 5 locations? Why are they building it? Why are they thinking about scale, right? I think a lot of people go to conferences and think about building a DSO. What does building a DSO really mean?
sure.
Are we setting up legal structures? Are we setting up multiple locations? Can we build one location with 15 operatories, build a multi-specialty in one umbrella? What are we really trying to build and the why? That's really important to us. And so we're trying to
Love it.
guide, the clients that are calling us, doing a consult with us to really help them understand the why. And if their end goal is to transact, then we want them to understand the mathematical outcome they're looking for, and that could be a 3-year horizon, that could be a 10-year horizon, and then we walk them through that journey on what that journey looks like, and because it's not, a lot of roses out there through the process, we want them to
Sure.
understand what that journey looks like.
So let's start with the end in mind, and I love that what you just said. So someone who's looking to transact. So let's say I got one practice and I want to scale it up, and I want to transact eventually. I remember in our conversation you said about if you want to transact at a certain time frame, you need to start going backwards and thinking about the time frame. When and why is a good time to start thinking in terms of when do I want to transact? Like a few years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? I want your experience on this.
Yeah, so I always recommend for people to think about their valuation expectations first. Okay,
Mm,
so I'll kind of use Noel, you've known me for a while. I'll use math as a
sure.
denominator to kind of think through it. So if somebody wants a 7x or 8x valuation, and let's remove the EBIT as a denominator for a second, okay?
Okay.
Then they're typically tied to a 5-year post-transaction event through employment or earnouts or some kind of a process, okay? Now, if somebody says, "Hey, I only wanna be 2 years post-employment or post-transaction," that limits our buyer pool. Now, at Polaris, we have a huge strategic pool, a huge private equity pool when we take clients to market. We don't, we run a very broad process. So I think that's important for people to think about. What are their valuation expectations? No, so if somebody comes to us and says, "I only want to be 2 years," now that 8x deal might go down to a 6x deal.
Mm,
Okay, just because their exit horizon is only 2 years, or 6.5x. So I
sure.
think, how they're looking to exit the deal impacts the value of the deal. So my recommendation to your audience is come to us 5 years out. Let us evaluate or before, let us
Okay.
evaluate your journey and then give you the recommendation. Are you 2 years out from your process, 5 years out from your process, 7 years out from your process? What is the process you're looking for based on your goals?
So it's like the retirement number. You got to have that in mind, right? Like, what is it that you're looking for?
Yes, I think we even help people come up with that number, and I'll kind of give you the
Okay.
basic mathematical answer again. I think that people need to think about after they paid off all their debt, okay?
That's a good
Um,
point.
after they paid off all their debt, right? Because you have to pay off your mortgage. If you have kids in
Right.
college, think about their 529 plans. And if you don't have a 529 plan, nothing wrong with that. You kind of either they're signing on for their student loan debt or you're paying for their student loan debt, right? Or their college education. But after you paid all the obligations, whatever your living expense is, and let's say
Mm,
it's 200,000 or $300,000. Okay. You multiply that times 15 post-tax basis. Everything's post-tax here. Okay.
correct.
That will be the stream of income you need for 25 years. So I just
Mm,
give, your audience members a really easy math number. Now I'm
love
no
it.
CFP. Okay. But that should give you a 5% or, 5% rate of return. That should give you a fairly easy stream of income. So
Sure.
people that are looking for $300,000 in income on a post-tax basis or pre-tax basis on that 5% return need $4.5 million in their retirement account at a liquidity event. Okay. So I'm just kind
Got
of
it.
giving you that math, like 300,000 is $4.5 million. So I think that just allows a 25-year stream of income, right? So those are kind of things to kind of think about in the math.
And with these numbers, the sky's the limit, right? I mean, you
Mhm,
can retire whatever amount you want.
mhm.
One of the burning questions a lot of people ask is, once when we transact, what is the post-sale look like? And since you've done so many of these transactions, what are some of the stuff, like the stuff you've seen which are favorable for the dentist owner and which are not favorable for the dentist owner? And I remember your conversation was like, not all the deals are the same. Getting more money does not mean it's a better deal. Something along those lines, like post-transaction. And then we'll come back to the other stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I always said devils is in the details, right? So
Yeah,
most of our clients do not go for the highest multiple. And I think it's very important to understand because as the highest multiples sometimes have caveats in the legal aspects of it and you can understand it when somebody's paying a premium for your transaction, they're going to look for some level of protection on the legal side.
sure.
So you have to kind of balance the last half of a turn or last one turn with what you're willing to compromise in the legal aspect or structure aspect of the deal. So it is our goal as the advisory firm to work with our client to kind of help them balance those needs.
Okay.
To to kind of think about, the difference to think about is one aspect is the employment term. So the employment term is going to dictate some level of valuation change on what that looks like. The involvement of the principal of the business actively within the business does dictate some level of valuation of the business. So when we work with
Mm,
clients, one of the biggest challenges that a lot of principals have is how dependent is the business on the principal?
that's
Okay,
important.
and a lot of principals have a difficult time transitioning out of the chair to running the business. Even when they're running the business, how they can scale back from running the business and letting the operations team run the business without them.
That's
And
huge.
and as you work with Aiden, and as we work with a lot of principals, our goal is for the business to run independent. We want our clients to go on vacation, travel the world for 2 to 3 weeks, and the business actually has an uptick when they're on vacation, you know?
Okay.
I mean, that'd be that's, like, we want them to say, "Well, the business didn't really miss me." And that's a good running efficient business. And if we can demonstrate that when we're taking a business to market, and if I can
Mm,
demonstrate that on a SIM, which is confidential information memorandum, and show systems within the business are performing quarter over quarter,
mm,
year over year, then I can get the extra half a turn, extra one turn on that business, even if the employment terms and the structure of the deal are more conservative. When I say conservative, where my client may say,
gotcha.
"Hey, Diwakar, I don't want to do a 5-year employment term, but I would like to do a 3.5 or 3-year if I can." The business is not really dependent on me because you've helped me scale back from the business. And I like to have some level of flexibility on it because now I can demonstrate different things within the business. So it all comes down to what can I demonstrate? The other aspect is just like publicly traded companies. If you look at stocks within a business,
Sure.
stocks go up to some level, not knowing exactly how, there's a lot of variables on in indicative stocks. They tend to go up when somebody can see a a leadership team forecast the earnings and the revenue of a
Mm,
business and how that company hits the predictability of that stock a quarter later. Okay.
sure.
So it is our goal with the principals and the executive team to ability to forecast their revenue, forecast their net expenses, forecast their ability to see the number of patients and execute on that strategy quarter after quarter and improve that quarter after quarter. And if they can do that and we can demonstrate that, now we can take that business to market, show that to the strategic partner or the private equity partner as they're scaling their business that, hey, this company forecasted, this is their notes, this is their quarterly meeting notes from their board meeting. Okay. They demonstrated
Sure.
that they actually hit it. And we're able to demonstrate that
Wow.
in our process.
Man, Diwakar, this is huge. This is huge. I'm serious because, guys like us, we are so entangled in the business that it's hard for us to pull ourselves out. And what you just mentioned, it's like, it's huge nugget. So you saying like as much as we can pull ourselves away from the business and the business is operating on its own, that's where you get the highest multiple. Is that correct? With the leadership team.
With the leadership team, and if you can show that, yeah. I mean, that's really because it's about scale, right? It's
Right.
about the ability to scale the business.
So someone who's really entangled in a business right now and they really want to take it to the private equity and they're just looking at the EBITDA, you would probably, in your experience, say that's not a good time to go yet, correct?
I mean, again, if you're 1 to 2 locations, I mean, you're gonna be tied to the business. I just wanna kinda caveat that.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're 1 to 2 locations, you're gonna be tied to some level to the business because you're probably in the chair. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. You're still gonna get a good valuation for your practice, and you're going to strategic,
Got it.
okay?
Okay.
That you're going to strategic at 1 to 2 locations, 1 to 3 locations. If you're at 10 to 25 locations, your
Mm-hmm.
options are strategic, your options are sponsors. Okay.
Okay.
So it
Okay.
really comes down to, and what kind of back office have you built? Have you built a good centralized back office? What is your uniqueness? I mean, these are the questions we're asking our clients. What makes you different than some of the existing platforms in the
I
space?
love it.
Okay.
Okay.
So when we take on a client to take them to market, to transact, and they're at 15, 25, 40 locations, we're actually asking questions like a buyer. What's different about you? You
Mm,
know? So, but then again, going downstream, if somebody's at 2 locations, at 3 locations, and we're
that's a
taking them to the
different
market,
story.
we're still asking the questions, okay? What the questions there would be, what is your valuation expectations? And what is different about you in the market? Let's say if somebody's located in Dallas, Texas, or somebody's located in San Antonio, Texas, what is unique about your business? And how have you weathered the competition in your market in 2024, 2025? And how do you see your business performing going in 2026?
Love
And
it.
we have to be able to work with them to show quarter-over-quarter improvement and going to market because that's what's gonna, even if that business is gonna transact at 6x or 7x, my goal is to transact it for an extra quarter to half a turn because I can show that business performing better than their peers and that our principal, our client, has the ability to outperform the market.
Got it. So it's pretty much is very tailored, right, to someone's goals and someone need and what's out there. You know, that's
Yes, I
that's
mean,
how
our
I'm
approach
looking
is
at it.
personalized. Yes.
Right, right, right. All right. So we talked about the goal, like what's going to happen on a transit. Let's come back. Let's come back in time a little bit. I'm going to pull you back to, let's say we have 1 or 2 locations or 3 locations. Now we want to start growing. We want to take our organization. We want to grow up into, like, let's say, into multiple locations. What are some of the challenges? I know for sure capital is one of the biggest challenges for sure. And then of course is the processes and, the systems. What's your take on that? On what the capital market is, like how do we get capital to grow and fund our growth?
Sure. So as I said earlier, I was in the credit markets for about 17 years. So I always
Uh-huh.
tell everybody this: I can get you in debt. Doesn't matter. So uh, finding capital for clients, that's not a concern for us. The question is being responsible with that credit and deploying
Mm,
that in a meaningful way. And the question is, why are you taking on the debt? And I'll give you an example of it, and I'll kind of go in and how scale matters when you're
sure.
taking on debt. So let's say you're buying a practice grossing $1 million, and you have two locations. You're buying your third location, and you're buying a practice grossing $1 million. And let's say the transaction firm's selling for 80% of revenue, and it's $800,000. When you take on that debt, you're going to the bank for $800,000 loan. The practice is selling for $800,000. The day after you've transacted, you have zero equity, just like real estate, right? And you buy real
Sure.
estate, the value of your loan, even if you put money into it, to the value of the property, your equity in that position is zero. Okay. So our goal with that client is to say, okay, what are we going to do with that asset we bought?
Mm,
Okay. How are we going to improve that asset from grossing $1 million to $1.5 million to $2 million? So we have to have a plan for growth before we acquire it. Okay. So we have to see some kind of a CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, within an 18 to 24-month plan within the business. So if you add on debt, and if you're going to take on debt, the ability to continuously have access to capital has to have foresight. Means you have to be able to show yourself first. Forget about the bank, that you can take on that debt, you can repay that debt, and that you can create equity within every business you buy within 12 to 18 months before you buy the next one. Okay.
mm,
That's responsible lending to yourself first before you show responsible lending to the bank. Okay.
gotcha.
So we work with our clients to kind of think through that philosophy as you grow. But the capital is available. I mean, cost of capital in 2023 and 24 were extremely high. So for secured overnight finance rate was really high. Those conditions have gone down a little bit. Prime's gone down. In my podcast end of last year, I talked about that prime's going to go down in Q1. It's gone down a little bit. I think going into Q3, Q4, we're going to see cost of capital probably by Q4 going down by at least 50 basis points.
Oh,
We're not going
wow.
to see some of
Okay.
those changes today, but I think we're going to see going down to Q3, Q4 another 50 basis points. It's going to be too politically driven to have it done right now. But I think you're going to see unemployment go up a little bit. You're going to see some level of uptick in inflation going up a little bit. But I think everything is a lagging indicator with the Federal Reserves. So they're going to probably react to a little bit in Q3 and then a little bit of Q4. So we're
Sure.
going to hopefully see prime go down to 7.1 to 7% by the end of the year. And I think that's going to, again, create some level of excitement going into the capital markets towards debt, towards equity, and all those things. And those are the kind of things. So to, coming out of 24, credit's readily available. Um,
Okay.
Credit was available in 24, but you had to have a really good performing business. In 25, credit's available now for businesses $2 million in check size to $50, $100 million. I mean, that's the space we play in, above $2 million in size. A lot of people are going to the traditional banks in the space and having a tough time getting debt above $2 million. That's where we really play.
Got it.
So that's not a challenge for us. And then institutional debt, where we sometimes play, is about $50 million and goes into $250 million.
Got it. Got it. So, okay. No, that's great. That's great to know about capital market. Let's go back to basics, man. Why would somebody want to grow?
That's a great question. I think those are very individual conversations we're having when clients are
Mm-hmm.
coming to us. I think, a lot of our people that come to us, are entrepreneurs, right? They're wanting to fulfill a vision. They have a practice that are one locations or two locations. They're wanting to see the practice grow within their four walls. They're wanting to grow to second or third locations. So that's one aspect of it. I always caution them. I said, hey, you know what? Be cautious about it. Growth is not always successful, right? So think about your four walls first. Think about, have you maximized your utilization within your four walls? And the thing I would get people to think about is, before you get to the next acquisition, think about, are you at $300,000 in revenue per operatory within your four walls? Okay. So that's probably a key takeaway for your audience members. So a 6-share operatory should be doing at least $1.8 million. An 8-share
Mm-hmm.
operatory should be doing about $2.4 million. If you're a run rate to do that, great. Now let's start thinking about the next acquisition. But also understand, do you have the bandwidth to do it? What is the quality of work-life balance you're looking for when you're
Sure.
thinking about those things? Are you comfortable with taking on the additional debt? So these are conversations we're having with people to make sure they understand that when you go from practice number 1 to practice number 2 to practice number 3, is that something you're ready for? And really I
Hmm.
think, Noel, you asked earlier, the biggest challenge ends up being practice number 3 and practice number 5.
Right.
Those are really the dark holes for a lot of people. Practice number 3 is where they really need to start stepping away clinically, maybe down to 2 days a week, because somebody has to work on the business. If you're not working on the business, we start to see financial performance and
Go down.
clinical performance
Hmm.
drop down in the business at practice number 3. And by practice number 5, they need to bring on a regional manager to run their operation in conjunction with them being on the business 2 to 3 days a week.
So the black hole, do you see oftentimes you see a lot of practitioners, they go down like pretty significantly in those?
Third practice is really the one we see the biggest drop in impact in financial performance. The third practice is probably the biggest one. If they can
Mm.
get past the third one, they can get to the fourth one. They start to see a little bit of an uptick. The fifth one is the next one we see a bigger drop in for 2 reasons. One, they're bringing on the regional manager. Sometimes the regional manager is not a successful hire. They're
Sure.
still trying to figure out their clinical schedule with running their business from afar. They might have associate turnover. Again, it's that fifth. Again, these are third and fifth one are their big black holes within the practice. So just managing that, having the foresight to it, stress testing your business, stress testing your cash flow. I think those are very important things. So anybody that's thinking about their third practice or their fifth practice, de novo or acquisition, I would drop your revenue down by 10%
Wow.
and test it and say, okay, if that happens to my business, how does my cash flow look? How does my lifestyle look? And what does my cash reserve look like under that environment?
Sure. And if someone have a stomach to take it, they go for it. Otherwise, they just stay where you are, correct?
Yes, yeah, and if you don't have the cash position today, then build up the cash position. And I always tell people they need to have 6 months of operating capital in cash reserves, within their bit.
6 months of
Mhm.
operating reserve. I love it. I love it. Now, when you say 6 months, it's like how often should somebody from a business start replenishing that cash? Let's say if they used it up. Is there a metric? Is there a formula? Or is it like just case by case basis?
So we use a rule of a third, a third, a third of excess cash. So
Okay.
I'm giving you a lot of your audience members getting a lot of like tidbits from this thing.
Oh
So
yeah, big
no,
time,
no,
big
no.
time.
So the majority of businesses have maybe 1 month of operating reserve and cash reserves. It's just what we see in the market out there. Um, so not to panic anybody in the market, there's a path forward, right?
Okay.
To get people there. And the way to think about it is as we help you improve performance within your business, okay, is to look at you improved cash flow, okay, which is after debt service, improved
Correct.
cash flow after your normalized clinical compensation, which is you're paying yourself as a normal doctor for working within the practice. So pay
Mm-hmm.
yourself normally, okay? And let's say, based on your improved performance, we're able to show that you're getting an extra $20,000 a month in cash flow, okay? A third, a third, a third. A third goes to pay taxes, put into your tax account, tax reserves, because Uncle Sam's got to get paid. Okay.
Right.
A third goes into your cash reserves for the business, which is help replenish your 6 months of operating capital.
Love it.
Okay. And a third goes into immediate gratification. Because if we don't realize it ourselves and we don't realize that we're able to put it into our personal savings account and our personal checking account and show that to our spouses and our family and our children and go on vacations and say, you know what, we are working hard and this is what owning a business is about. Okay. Then we're not able to validate for ourselves the
Mm.
reason we're working harder and what our business is able to provide for us. So a third, a third, a third.
The rule of thirds. I love it. I love it, man. Let's talk about multiples. You and I, we just spoke about the business should be ready to transact, right? Like, what are some of the preparation stuff that we do? I mean, we don't really have to decide like, hey, we're going to transact, we're going to sell. But I feel like at any given time, that business should have like a valuation done and should be ready to go. What are your thoughts on that part?
Absolutely. We recommend people every 3 to 5 years come to us for an analysis to see where their
Uh-huh.
business is today even if they're transacting in 10 years, just to kind of get an analysis, okay, hey, somebody comes to us today and say, hey, I'm looking to transact in 2030. Nothing wrong with that. We can have them do a due diligence and say, if your valuation expectations, let's say you have 2 locations, okay? And we actually did that with somebody that has 2 locations, and their valuation expectations was $8 million, okay? And based on where their business is today, they're probably on track to hit 5 million, okay? And we said, hey, these are the things you need to be thinking about if you want to get to where your valuation expectations are in 5 years.
Sure.
We actually provided them the guidance today if they want to work towards those goals. Okay. And we gave them the guidance to think through it. That's our discovery day of go to market. So, and said, hey, why don't you come back to us in another 2 years? Because that will put you right around another 3 years from that from a transaction. And we need to, at that point, think about going to market. So you have 2 years to fix the operational issues in the business we identified today if you're thinking of transacting in 2030.
So would you recommend that someone looking to grow and acquire practices that they need to fix their existing ones and the current books first, right? Before actually going out there to the market and saying, hey, I want to buy another practice or another practice.
Yes. I mean, financial reporting is so essential within the
Uh-huh.
business. And when we onboard a client, I mean, that's one of the first things we notice. We onboard and we do financial due diligence and operational diligence in the company. So financial reporting is if you don't have clear line of sight within the business, and then how are you running the business from my lens,
Correct.
right? Yes, you can look at production reports, yes, you can look at clinical reports, and yes, it gives you some level of line of sight. And I really do appreciate it when you have reporting like dental intel and practice analytics, and allows you to understand how patient care is being done within the practice. Absolutely appreciate that. But having good financial reporting that allows
Exactly.
you to understand exactly what things, how operational performance is tied to financial performance on a real-time basis, which means you should have financial reporting within 10 days to max 15 days after month end. That gives you clear KPIs. Means if you're trying to run supply expenses at 4.5% of your top line revenue, you should know that by the 10th to 15th day of the month that you are there. If you're trying to keep dental assistant wages around 7% or 8% or 9%, depending on your business model, some businesses have a dental wage expense of 9% in their model. Nothing wrong with it. Even the industry might say 7%.
Correct.
Nothing wrong with that because we'll say, okay, your model does deserve it because you are XYZ type of dentistry. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We will accommodate that, but we need to have that reporting by the 10th day of the month because we need to be able to pivot if we're looking to make a change within the business. So that's really important. And that comes down to changing from cash to accrual, especially if
Cash
you're
to accrual.
cash to
Love it.
accrual, especially a lot of businesses, when we take them to market, if you're exceeding, this goes into the larger groups, when you start exceeding 5 locations.
Mm-hmm.
When you start exceeding $2 million in EBITDA, we're probably the only firm that will take a client and ask them to do a sell side QOV, the quality of earnings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we believe in that wholeheartedly. Our due diligence typically is about
What what
5.
what is that? What is that? And let's talk about why.
Yeah, so if the best way for me to describe a quality earnings is like a home
Uh-huh.
inspection. When you buy a house,
Love it.
um, you know, the buyer's gonna do a home inspection, right? And they're gonna go through every cabinet door, refrigerator, turn every faucet
Okay.
on and off, and they're gonna say, and no home inspection comes out and tells you you have a perfect house from a buy side,
Sure.
okay? So I always tell people when you're selling a house, get your home inspection done so you know what's wrong with your house, okay? And you know exactly where you stand, okay? So when we have a business that is over about 1.5 to $2 million, and I talk about this in our podcast, we do have our clients do a sell side QV. It allows us to have a higher level of accuracy when we take a deal to market and have a
Mm,
defensible position in the market. Okay, a defensible position in the market.
got it.
And so now you have 2 positions in the market: a Polaris financial metrics and a sell side QV, third party firm. Okay, both
Understood.
with a
Wow.
very close number, and our numbers are within 5%, typically maximum 7% off from a sell side QV. A buy side is going to come in and have their QV, quality of earnings, also done. Okay. Their house inspection done of auditing your financial numbers. Okay. And they're going to have a difficult time looking at that number and having a much variance number because you have 2 firms having a number that's very close to each other. They're going to come in within your number. Okay. So that allows people to have a closing LOI be very close to the initial LOI from our process
Gotcha.
because our numbers are so close to typical third-party QAVs in our process. So quality of earnings is a financial due diligence typically done 1 to 2 years out, okay?
1 to 2 years out.
Oh, I'm sorry, 1 to 2 years back.
Back.
Apologize. Yeah,
Okay.
in a business. So, if you're orthodontics, we go back 2 years, okay, within the
Got it.
business.
Got it.
Because orthodontics patient cycles are 18 to 24 months. If they're general, we go back 12 months to maybe 18 months, depending on the type of business we're looking at, within the business. And it's important, the larger the cycle of the business, if it starts becoming more than $5 million in EBITDA, we might go out more than 12 months. If
Okay.
it's closer to 1 million to 1.5 million in EBITDA, closer to 1.5 million, we're just doing 12 months. But it's well worth it. I mean, we're able to drive valuation of the business. What is the impact of it? For example,
Mhm.
whenever we have a sell side QV in our deals, based on our Rolodex, we're able to drive a certain quality of buyer to the letter of intent,
Mm.
certain valuation to our letter of intent, because what we've done for the buyer is given them confidence. Just like when you buy a house, imagine when you're looking at a house, you have
Sure.
5 houses to look at. One house has a home inspection already done on it. The other 4 houses have no home inspection done on it. Just takes your level of stress away when you're buying that house, that home inspection is done and you know what's done. Now, you may do your own home inspection because you need to have something that reflects your interest.
Of course.
But if that home inspection is done for you, you kind of know, yeah, that faucet in the kitchen is not going to work. It's going to cost me $200 to have a handyman fix it. Okay? But you're aware of it and you're comfortable with it versus the other 4 houses are not giving you that information. Okay? And that's really our process in the market is to ensure there's a higher level of confidence with our clients to the buyer space. So when the deal is going to market, we have more confident LOIs being issued. Our clients understand that we have a bona fide offer on the table.
Love it. Love it. Would you recommend everybody just do it just for the sake of doing it, or is it only when you're about to transact?
I would recommend to call us and understand does
Okay.
it make sense for them because it is an expense they take on board that needs
Sure.
to make sense for their business. We have some clients that are going to market in 2028 that we're doing that for them right now.
Oh,
So they're going to
wow.
do one now, one in 2 years because they're actually prepping for their business 2 years ahead, right? So that's
Understood.
really a process that's a little more
Mm.
personalized to them 2 years out because we're trying to test their process 2 years out. So it doesn't make sense for everyone. So to answer your question.
Got it. Got it. Switching gear a little bit, coming back to we are slowly going back to the single practice, right? So now we are looking at group practice trying to buy a single practice. Aiden keeps talking about arbitrage. I want you to kind of shine some light on what is that and why does it matter? So let's say a group of 6 or 7 locations trying to buy one practice. What is the difference in that multiple that we're looking at?
Yeah. So we've worked with a lot of groups that are 5 to 10 locations that are buying 1 to 2 location practices in the market.
Sure.
And there's this play of arbitrage, which is economic upside within a deal. Okay. So instead of the doctors that are 1 to 2 locations transacting with a strategic that is private equity backed, they're consolidating within doctor to doctor owned practices. So there's
Mhm.
this big movement coming out of 2023, 2024 that they're not going to big strategics in the market. They're actually transacting within the doctor pool. So you have this big, you know, 5 to 15 location group growing in the space. And what this economic arbitrage is if you have a doctor location group that is 5 locations, and let's say they're $2 million in EBITDA, okay?
Mhm.
And let's say their valuation is 7x or 8x in the market, okay? They can acquire a practice, a solo location at 5x, okay? Maybe 6x, okay, depending on where that practice's EBITDA is at. And the next day they can roll it into their cap table or their ownership table at 7x or 8x. The
Mm.
so the moment they roll it in, there's a 1 turn improvement, maybe a 2 turn improvement,
Got
okay?
it.
Okay, and that's for both sides. That's for the doctor that's rolling their equity in, and that's also beneficial for the party that's rolling that doctor in. So it's mutually beneficial for both parties. that they can continue to grow that journey together. So hopefully the doctor that's rolling in their practice into the 5-location group has a good partnership plan in place or growth strategy and plan
Sure.
in place for that. And the 5-location group that's working with that 1-location doctor has a good plan to support them to grow that business. So it needs to be mutually beneficial on that side. And so when we're working on that buy side to help bring that partnership together, that economic arbitrage is immediate because of the
Hmm.
delta between the 7x and the 6x or 7x and the 5x is immediate. But also there needs to be a long-term plan improvement for both parties.
And you guys at Polaris help with advising both sides or one side, depending who you're representing, correct?
Well, yeah, 9 out of 10 times we get brought in by the group that's like 3 to 5 locations or 10
And they're buying
locations.
that.
Yeah, but we actually are working on both sides. I mean, we'll go and if our 5-location client or 10-location client is not being fair towards a 1-location doctor, we'll actually say, "Hey, and I think if we do this decision, you're gonna kill the deal."
Yeah.
And we don't want them to kill the deal. We want it to be equitable because to me, a good partnership is a partnership where that 1-location doctors feels that the goodwill was given
Of
sincere
getting on.
consideration from the beginning, right? And because it's not, even if they're willing over 30%, 40%, let's not go over the 30,000 or $50,000 valuation change. Let's focus on what this journey looks like over the next 5 to 10 years.
Cool. Well, I got this last topic here for you.
Sure.
Now I'm a new dentist. I just started. I want to grow a group. And that is a lot of the dental students nowadays I'm seeing there. For some reason, they all want to grow a group for some reason, right? De novo or acquisition as a very first practice, and pros and cons of both.
So that's a really tough question for me because I've done over 1,000 de novos as a credit
You
banker.
love de novos, I know
Yeah,
that.
and I've done a few hundred acquisitions in my last 7 years. They both work really well. So I'll answer the question. And I actually spoke at the Academy Dental Group practices on this topic specifically.
Okay.
So de novos are meaningfully successful in the fact that if you are willing to spend 500,000 to 600,000 or 700,000, depending on the square footage of the space, and you have a good marketing plan in place, and you can get to $40,000 to $50,000 in production in the first month. Okay, there's a whole plan in place around that, and if you have a plan in place with new patient flow to get to $1 million in revenue in the first 18 months, okay, they're going to be very successful. And if you look at a lot of successful models for de novos, they're trying to get to $1 million in revenue in the first 18 months. Okay. And you can build a successful group practice that way. Okay. But you need to be able to reverse engineer your plan. Okay. And you need to have patience and fortitude to be able to build a successful de novo model. 50% of our clients, 60% of our clients that do group practices are de novo models. Okay. You look at Pacific Dental Services, historically, they've been a de novo model, very successful in the market. Okay. Deca Dental overall was a de novo model, very successful in the space, right?
Sure.
So really good brands in the space that do a really good aspect of de novo. So I don't want to discourage people from building de novos. I think the challenge ends up being that are you okay with low cash flow in the beginning? But I think that could be offset by having planning into
Planning.
your business
Okay.
model, and we help people plan. So if somebody is a startup doctor thinking about it, give us a call. We can help you think through it as far as what that looks like. As far as acquisition goes, if you're thinking about your acquisition in your situation, ideally buy a practice that's 6 shares, okay, if you can. Now, that may not be available in your market, okay? You might be looking at a 3-chair or 4-chair practice in your first practice, okay? Don't be discouraged by it, but buy a practice that has a low remaining lease term, okay? I
Low
said
remaining lease term.
low
Okay.
low remaining lease term. I said that specifically with intent. Reason being, if you're looking to scale a group practice, okay, buyers in the space want multiple provider practices, okay? They do not want single provider locations. So 4-chair practices are not very attractive in the
Mm,
buyer space, okay? They want 6 to 8 chairs. Okay, that becomes very attractive in the space because their concern is if a doctor resigns or a doctor quits, am I
sure.
shutting down that practice in that location? So if you're looking at a practice that has 3 chairs or 4 chairs, absolutely go for it, acquire it. Just look at to make sure it's got a 2-year, 3-year lease remaining on it. Or if a bank's requiring you to have a 5-year lease, great. Get a 2-year lease with 3 one-year renewals on it. Get to a 5-year lease, satisfy the bank, okay? At the end of 2 years, if you have 3 chairs on it, you should have $900,000 revenue. Remember I said $300,000 per operatory, okay?
Right, right.
You would have bought that practice for hopefully a good economic value. You would have
Uh-huh.
created good equity. Remember I said when you buy a practice, you need to be able to create equity within 18 months. Borrow responsibly. And at that point, relocate that practice, that's 3 chairs or 4 chairs, to a 6 to 8 year facility 12 months before your lease is expiring,
Love
okay?
it.
And then, now you've set up your, lack of better word, Taj Mahal of
No.
your first practice. That's your 8-chair practice. You're bringing on your associate, work on your leadership skills, build out your team, scale back to maybe from 5 days or 4 days to 3 days, figure out how you're running the business on the business before you think about going to your second location.
That's a nugget right there. That's a huge one. Why does banks have so much a problem giving out loans on a de novo versus an acquisition?
I
If
think that,
if everything is planned out, like you as a past banker, you did a lot of underwritings. What is the biggest concern they have? Is it the operator or is it the de novo in general?
so I think I'll speak from what may be happening out there. So one could be the operator, one could be the business plan. Okay, so business plans are a lot. Okay, and I think a lot of people may not be thinking about their business plans clearly. And Noel, I'm happy to help people think through the business plan on another podcast,
Sure.
because I've done a lot of business plans, and we actually have a curriculum internally on how business plans should be for group practices and how business plans should be for private practices that are 1 to 2 locations, and how to think about de novo versus acquisitions on growth strategies. And when they're thinking, so that's one aspect of it. The second aspect is that banks look at how doctors are applying for startups. Okay, so these are some criterias out there that are in the market. So if somebody's coming out of dental school that does not have GPR, okay, general practice residency
Right, right.
behind there on there, then they're going to have a tough time getting bank financing without GPR. Okay, so I don't know if some of your audience members are having those challenges or not, but typically without a GPR, it's tough. Okay, with a GPR, you typically have to have 1 year licensed. Okay, without a GPR, you have to have 2-year licensed.
Okay.
Okay, so these are some things to kind of just put as a guardrail to kind of think about. Okay,
Sure.
then typically, I'm going to give you a lot of credit aspects of how to think about on that side. In addition to that, most banks are looking for doctors to at least make about $175,000 to $200,000 in personal income. Okay, why is that? Okay, well, the average doctor has about $400,000 to $450,000 in student loan debt coming out. Okay, even if they were
Correct.
on an income-based repayment program because they have $500,000 in a mortgage. Okay, because they're going to have $500,000 in
Exactly.
mortgage. They might have one car loan. Their spouse might be making $150,000 to augment some of that personal household income. They still need to make $200,000. Why is the bank looking for that? They're saying, okay, you're applying for a $500,000 bank loan. Okay, that needs to at least gross $1 million in revenue at some point, even if it's 3 years out. Forget about my 18-month rule.
Sure.
Let's use a 3-year rule that a bank may have on that practice, or a 4-year rule that a bank may have on that practice. They're going to say, okay, in order for that practice to do $1 million, that means a doctor has to have the ability to produce $800,000. Is he or she producing $800,000 today as an associate? And if they're not producing that as an associate, how will they be able to run a practice and produce $800,000 on their own? Okay.
Mhm.
So those are the kind of underlying things a bank's looking at and thinking about and wanting to digest, in their business plan, in their economic due
Gotcha.
diligence, to kind of think about long term when they're thinking about de novo underwriting. It becomes a little bit easier in acquisition, but on the acquisition side, it's actually a little more cleaner. More deals get turned down in acquisition financing than startup financing, thinking about it. Being, if I'm a doctor making, let's say, $150,000, and let's say I'm buying a practice grossing $1.5 million, and the selling doctor is grossing $1.2 million, I'm producing $150,000 or making $150,000 as an associate. I'm clinically producing, let's call it $500,000. Bank's not going to approve me for $1.2 million. The bank's going to be concerned How can I replace a $1.2 million producing doctor when
Hmm.
I, as an associate, am only producing 5 or 600,000? Those are the question a bank's going to ask. And I'm just giving you my
Those
banker's
are
lens.
great. Those are great, great nuggets because, we as dentists, we don't think about like bankers going to be knowing all this stuff, right? So we are like, all right, cool. We got denied. Why? Right. No, I love it. I love it. Hey, Diwakar, anything else you would like to add? I mean, this was a great, great episode. Lots of nuggets, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of take away, as far as building a group practice, or even if you're 1 to 3 locations, just kind of think with the end in mind. And if you don't have an end in mind, we're happy to have that conversation with you.
Hmm.
Building a group practice can be great, can be very rewarding, but it comes with challenges, within that. So take a pause, let's digest what that looks like for you. And we're happy to walk you through that. Whenever your exit is, really come to us 5 years out to 7 years out before that. Help us and let you understand what that looks like for you. Because to
Sure.
maximize the value of your business, you really need to transact 5 years out, because most parties want you on board for 3 to 5 years to really provide that continuity and make sure they have good longevity within the business.
Absolutely. And Polaris does all this stuff here. In full disclosure, I was a client of Polaris as well. And, we did take away lots of good stuff. And I think Aiden was our guy that he helped us with getting us set up. And so far, we are on the right projection. So the trajectory is right. I mean, the direction is good. So Polaris does a lot to help any group practice. How can someone, what is the website there? Polaris.com, Healthcare
No, that's
Partners.
going to get you to the ATV website.
Okay. Okay.
No, our website is PolarisHealthcarePartners.com.
PolarisHealthcarePartners.com. I'm definitely going to put a link down there as well. Anyone, when they call, what are they expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they send me an email, I think they're going to get, depending on their need, we'll just do a basic consult to
Sure.
understand what they're looking about. And we're happy to, again, just kind of help them if they're coming out of residency, just thinking about a startup. We can just have a consult with them, give them guidance. Probably 20% of my calls are people that are 1 year out. I mean, we're
Oh,
talking to
wow.
people now that are 1 year out, thinking of building their first practice, to your point, Noel. And we're just giving them the guidance
Wow.
on how to think about doing their de novo. So we're just happy to have conversations with people to kind of think about what their future looks like in 5 years, 10 years out. So just give us a call. Let us have a conversation with you. Help us give you your vision, give you the why, and guide you in what your right direction may be coming out of the podcast.
All right. Great deal. Hey, Diwakar, thanks a lot for coming on. It was a great pleasure. You
Noel,
shared
thank you for
lots of
having
good
me.
tips. Yep. So we're going to land the plane here. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching and thanks for hearing. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we will catch you on our next episode.